Hi, this is Ms. Bahak. Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast, where you can get fresh ideas for your training, nutrition, and lifestyle to immediately put to use. Listen in with Marcus Philly, the creator of functional bodybuilding, and myself.
Hi, I'm Marcus Philly, and we're broadcasting from Revival Strength in San Rafael, California.
We'll be talking about avoiding burnout, keeping your passion alive for training, and fueling your body and mind so you can look good, move well now, and for years to come. The heart-pumping feeling of competing with the person next to you at your gym can be addictive. Your adrenaline can pull you into greater capacity. But is it the wisest choice for day-to-day training? Turning on the racing switch means there's little room for quality movement and improving technique. This episode is for coaches whose athletes only seem to care about the score on the board instead of moving well, and for athletes who wonder if your progress is hindered by the competitive atmosphere. And we're back.
We are back. Episode 2.
Yeah.
Season 3.
This topic is a cool one.
Yeah.
It's revolving around the competitive aspect of a group class. Sometimes I forget that this still even exists. And then I'm reminded when I talk with friends or look around, I'm like, oh my gosh. Or step into the environment myself. I'm like, wow, this is gnarly. Like, it feels like sometimes people are showing up to the gym like they are going to the CrossFit Games, and it's like every single day. And I can only imagine how exhausting that must be to keep up with that vibe.
Right.
Or if you're not entertaining that vibe, how it can feel a little, I don't know, disconnected. So I love to explore that a little bit. Talking about we've been having a lot of gyms that are now using FBB in their group classes, and maybe some of the observations you've seen, since that's kind of happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's first important to just acknowledge that this isn't some totally backwards phenomenon that's happening that has no merit. There's a reason why it's happening. So let's just name it. It's like many people were brought into a fitness culture in the past 5 to 10 years in a group class environment. CrossFit specifically. CrossFit created kind of a measurable, fitness approach that allowed people to compare themselves through some numbers. And then also part of the culture was built around, if you do this, if your measurements are faster or heavier, then that means you're doing better. That means you're getting more fit, and then all else will follow. So what happens? The culture latches onto that, and then it soon becomes, well, if I beat the person next to me, I'm doing better for myself, and so that becomes a focal point. And there's coaches, there are gym owners, there's participants, athletes, members that have really bought into that as a sole principal focus in fitness. And there's something, if anybody's experienced it, when you're feeling good and you've got all of your, abilities about you and you're in that environment, it can bring out another level of your abilities. It can kind of push you to do something that you otherwise maybe wouldn't have access to. Mm-hmm. What that is just adrenaline. That's basically hormones inside your body that get ignited when you're in a competitive fight for your life environment, right? People aren't fighting for their lives, but it turns on similar hormone pathways that a lion chasing you kind of turns on, right? Anybody who hears that 3, 2, 1, go, and they get that that feeling, that butterfly, that's hormones coursing through your bloodstream that are tacking onto sensory receptors all over your body that make you feel that way. And then as a result, it kickstarts, in most cases, sugar metabolism, and it does a whole host of things to your actual cells. Those are good if you're trying to run from a lion. Maybe they're not so good if you're like trying to look good, move well for the rest of your life, if you're doing it really often. But anyway, that's where it comes from, you know, and it's easy to get kind of pulled into it, you know, and it's addictive. I mean, those kind of hormone pathways and those receptors, those sensory receptors, and that feeling of adrenaline, like it hits some of the same neurotransmitter release buttons that, you know, other addictive substances do. So, and on top of that, the conceptual, you know, framework of, well, if you're doing it this hard and you're competing with each other and you're actually trying to win, that's the best way to get fit. It's like, it's hard to deny, like, okay, well, then I should definitely do this. It feels good. I mean, I get the jolt, you know, I get that jolt. And then I also am told that that's the way to get fit. So, you know, I'm going to ignore the fact that I'm feeling a little burnt out, or that I'm feeling a little aches and pains, and that I'm feeling like my movement quality kind of sucks, and I know my form is breaking. Like, I'm just going to ignore all that because there are these other stronger pulls that I'm feeling. So, you know, I think it's important to just like talk about that and let everybody know that I understand. And I've been in that culture for a long time, and I still deal with and work with clients and coaches and gym owners that have that, you know, present in their communities. And what has been the downside of some of that? Well, some of the downside is got nothing to do with, like, you know, it's bad to work out with groups. Like, it's great to work out with groups. We work out in groups here all the time. We don't do the same training as each other. We're not racing each other, but we have the support of one another at Revival Strength. So the part about, like, being around others is super attractive, and it gives you motivation at times when you're trying to work hard. But the downsides really come back to, like, once you turn on a switch that says I'm racing against somebody, and you truly are, like, focused on that, then there's very little room for much else. There's little room for, you know, quality movement adaptations, meaning you can't improve your technique if you're racing somebody. You improve technique through skill work, through lower intensity activities, so that when you go to race somebody, it shows up for you when you're doing something high intensity. But if you're doing that constantly through your training, then there's not a lot of skill adaptation that gets to happen. People aren't always moving better. You know, the mechanics don't improve as fast, as quickly, or ever. Additionally, there's a whole lot of, like, I talked about the hormone release that happens when people are racing. You know, when people are going fast, and some of those hormones, there are many of those, you know, that hormone pathway is a stress hormone pathway. You know, stress release, adrenaline, cortisol release, that tells your body we're in a stressful state and I gotta go and I gotta get things moving inside of me to make sure I have enough energy and nutrients to support the effort in front of me. You know, we're adapted to have stress in our life, but too much of it, I think people know at this point, is not good. So you put too much of that in play, people start to have adverse reactions to that. They can start to find themselves unable to produce energy in other parts of their life. They're tired other parts of their life. They don't have the energy that they thought exercise was going to give them when they want to go and do something active. And I think what ends up happening for a lot of groups out there and people that are coaching groups is that it's kind of like, I don't know how to break away from that. Because now my clients are kind of addicted to it. They believe that there's only one way to get a good workout. And every time that I've tried to sort of focus on quality more and, like, dial things back, they end up saying, oh, this wasn't a good workout. And that's the worst thing to hear as a coach or an owner, because you immediately think, oh gosh, like I'm going to lose this person if they don't feel like they get a good workout. So what do? You feed into that by giving them more of the stuff that they think that they want and that they need. But remember, that's built on a hormone. It's like, it's built on the same pathways that kind of get people addicted to, substances of abuse, right? And it's no wonder people get addicted to them, but you're not like, oh, well, you can't live without it, so I'm just keep giving you more of it, right? There has to be a moment of like, no, we have to draw a line somewhere, or we have to like dose them back. So going back to the first point, it's like, I think it was my first point, but it's like, I can't get a good workout if I dial things back for people and focus on mechanics. Well, that's where it's like one area where we've injected functional bodybuilding into training is we have great examples and programs available that are extremely challenging for people, that make them work really hard. But because of the way they're written and because of the way that we utilize control points within our training, tempo, rest, prescribed effort, etc., people really get to focus on quality while working hard, so to speak. This isn't the absolute highest power production that they can do, but it elicits a similar response in terms of effort, perceived effort given, and leaves people feeling like sweaty, getting a good metabolic, dose to their bodies, building their skeletal musculoskeletal systems, like building lean tissue, and improving the quality of their movement. The functional bodybuilding experience that we hosted here at Revival Strength, was a 2-day athlete seminar education experience that exposed people to basically 4 workouts that were super simple. There was almost zero power or intensity that happened. A very limited amount of what people would consider like true competing and racing. The rest was just super simple stuff. And when done correctly, when coached correctly, people got better at their movement. They connected with muscles that they hadn't used before, and they were all like dead tired, by the end of it. The difference was that they didn't lay on the floor for 20 minutes. They were tired. They felt like they got a great workout, and then within a reasonable amount of time, they were like having conversations and ready to move on with their day and feeling energetic. So why don't I pause here for a second, because I got going on a little rant, but you jump in and rein me back in, Mizba.
No, I think about culture here. It's like it's so difficult once you've kind of started this loop, right? And
make sure you guys are in frame.
Once you started this loop, because it's like it's just it feels out of control. I can think of being in a scenario where I was coaching group class, and it's almost like any good principles you want to bring to the table, none of them are going to have much merit for people, because there's this pre-existing belief of what you said, which is like, this is how I do it. This is how it needs to be done. Anything outside of this is not good enough.
Yeah.
And that can't, and anytime that one person from the pack tries to kind of move on from that or deviates from it in any way, I understand the pressure of this too. You feel outside the loop, right? And even if you're doing the thing that's kind of aligned with you, you're going to get peer pressure from everybody else who's kind of ingrained. This culture is ingrained within. And so part of me thinks like anytime because that shift, I feel like, has to come at some point, I guess, right? For sustainability, and if you want to keep kind of, I guess, growing the culture, growing the business, is like you could either have people that are there addicted to the adrenaline rush until it just doesn't work for them anymore, and then you have new people in that loop who are doing the same thing, just getting addicted to that adrenaline rush. Or you could have effectiveness to this group culture that is so great. So I guess my question would become like, how do you start to shift the culture when there's such an ingrained there's so much within it. How do you start to make that,
It's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
You figure that out and you create a path for people to take, you will be super successful and you will help millions of people, perhaps. I don't know. But that's the question that we're trying to answer, and I think we have some really great insight. I know I sure do, because 8 years ago, I was at a CrossFit facility as a coach, became an owner. I started program design for that affiliate, which was, at the time, it grew to 4 locations, over 600, 500, 600 members. So a lot of people doing my training, okay? And my training evolved as I started to learn more. And when I made a big quantum leap in my understanding of fitness, I tried to change things really fast. And there was a ton of kickback. And it was like, oh man, I think I overshot that a little bit. And then there was like, well, how do I drip this in a way that gets people to train? I don't want to say like tricking the clientele, but like basically getting them to think they're doing what they've come to know, but from a program design and an execution standpoint, it looks and feels very different. There's more opportunity to coach. There's more control points in the program. So that was years of doing that for a group fitness facility. And then of course, leaving that to start this business, coaching individuals, also designing Awaken training series, now designing, what we're calling the group functional bodybuilding program. Tons of like feedback and learning and lessons from that whole entire experience. So some of the highlights of that, of those lessons are, don't try and change it all at once. If you try and change it all at once, you're going to be met with the wrath of the group that is super addicted and super set in their ways, right? And that's not what you want. You want to slowly introduce this concept into the population. Number 2, it is, deep, embedded in a lot of the cultures of these gyms is something that's talked about but not executed on, which is quality movement or mechanics, precedes intensity. So great. You guys have already talked about it. You said that you got to have good form before you can lift heavy. So now actually now you can say, we have a way for us to do that better. We have a plan in place to allow you guys to control your movements more and create better movement patterns and a better, hip, shoulder, core, robust, strength underneath everything else. So that's a way to kind of engage the clientele in the conversation, because you have to have like an entry point as to like, well, why are we changing something? And then of course, like, being able to spot the stuff that happens in your clientele when it happens or before it happens, and certainly after some things happen, like overuse injuries, nagging pains, people plateauing in their fitness progressions, and being able to say, okay, gosh, that shouldn't be happening, right? Like, why is that happening? I've got this great fitness program, like they shouldn't be getting injured. Do not just be like, oh, they're not taking care of themselves. Oh, they're just, they're not doing enough mobility. Like, don't put it all on the client. Like, take ownership of it yourself, because you got a client who doesn't take good care of themselves. Okay? You got a lot of them. You can educate them a lot. You can keep working on them. But at the end of the day, they go home, they treat their body the way they treat it, they eat what they're going to eat, and they want to come back and they want to have a good fitness experience the next day. So better to assess where your average clientele is actually at, what they can really tolerate, what is their total stress, tolerance, and then provide them with a couple, training sessions that play into what they're capable of doing, as opposed to always having them try and exceed what they're capable of doing every day. So that competitive culture of the gym, I honestly think that some clients are getting tired of it. I know that there are clients at some point that get tired of it, and I've spoken to many of them. It's like 5 years I was in the that scene, and I just had to kind of take a break. I just didn't want to race anymore. It's because they're tapped out on that. They've put in far too much work. They were blind to the effects of it, and then finally it caught up with them. Then and what it resulted is, it was like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. So by giving them an opportunity to do something at a different speed with a different intent that gets them to work equally hard, right? You know, bodybuilding for years was a great freaking workout for people, and it made them work super hard, and it got them super jacked and super lean, right? But there was some part of it that was missing. It was like, okay, there's no functional component of this. Like, the movements got boring, and I couldn't do it in a community setting. It was more isolated people doing stuff in their own little wings of the gym. Okay, so great, we've upgraded. You know, now we have these functional bodybuilding programs and templates that actually provide people an option to say, okay, hey, 2 days a week, or 3 days a week, or even 1 day a week, we're going to change the programming and we're going to make it this focus. People are going to get great strength benefits. They're going to get great conditioning benefits even, right? Because how we organize supersets, how we do tempo training, you know, how we focus like these couplets of movements really is aerobics, certainly with shorter rest periods. Like, people get a great dose from it. And what it does, it's going to just prolong people's experience in your program and in your gym for a long time. They're going to have, you know, they're going to get that break from like that relentless intensity, like, I got to race every single day. Like, let them race twice a week, 3 times a week, but 6 times a week, you know, 7 days a week. Like, that's a recipe for disaster at some point. And so this is an opportunity to inject, you know, a different feel and a different culture, and again, doing it slowly, you know, is a great way to kind of approach the situation, and using, you know, proven programs that actually deliver a great training dose for your clients, so that they don't leave feeling like, oh, I didn't get the same, you know, feeling that I got before.
Yeah, I think part of that, like doing it bit by bit, and also thinking about like just some of the gyms that I've gotten to speak with who are starting to implement this and how they make that shift. I find it like you almost kind of have to have a conversation, right? Like, whether you call it a town hall meeting or whatever it is, however you want to portray it, like being able to sit down and map out what you're thinking and translate that to all your clients. Because without that, it's almost like you have people who have been in this culture, they have a certain way of doing things, and they don't have context for why you're changing what you're changing. Aside from, you know, maybe a couple lines that you say, but being able to go in detail and have interaction in that sense, I feel like could be a great tool for starting to kind of improve buy-in.
Yeah, I think you're right. And in my experience, there is about 10 to 15% of the population that wants to have that more deep conversation, that's looking for the town hall meeting, and they're some of your biggest influencers, right? They're the people that are totally bought in, and they whatever you say, they are repeating it in the office and with their friends. So it's definitely important to have that. There's a bigger population at your gym that is more or less just trusting you to give them what's best, you know, and they have a physical experience when they're in the gym that they can connect to and know if it's like, oh, that felt good or it didn't feel good. They're going to feel really good doing this type of work. And they also are the same group that, you know, and that's true for most of the group, but they respond a lot to like the actual coaching that they get, and the experience of like being in a with, you know, some camaraderie in a group, and they don't necessarily live for the race. You know, it's like there were like a smaller percentage of members at my gym that would like get up to the whiteboard and write their times down, and then a bunch that were like, I forgot my time, like that, you know. They weren't really counting, you know. so they're the ones that, they're a bigger percentage. So if you believe in it and you talk about it with passion, and you still coach them, and that's another beauty of like this style of training. It's like there's more coaching opportunities.
Yeah.
When you are just in the 3-2-1 go 20-minute AMRAP, where people pretty much past the 5-minute mark are kind of just like in on another planet, and their minds have just kind of gone. Like you can go up to them and you can be like, hey, I want you to fix your position, and they're like, okay. And what do they do next? They do the same bad rep over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Because they're at this point they're in that race, and they're not really fixing stuff. They're just using what they've got. So with this a group FBB approach, or and maybe you should talk about this too. It's like you're programming for a number of gyms, and you've provided custom training programs that are built in our philosophies of training for gyms all over the world. You have one in Japan, you had one on the East Coast, Brick CrossFit, and what are they getting? Well, the coaches are getting opportunities to coach, because there's like a method to like, okay, we're going to move through this methodically. You're going to have rest, you're going to have supersets, you're going to be doing a lot of work, but you're also going to be doing some like resting in between to keep you fresh so that you can get good quality. And in those rest periods, and when your clients are not just like bathing in a sea of lactic acid where they're just like confused, you can actually talk to them.
Yeah, I think that's been really fun to see actually with Chikara Fitness in Japan. I've been seeing just videos on Instagram of the other coaches who are, taking videos of themselves mapping out topic points that relate to the training on the whiteboard, right?
Yeah.
And having this dialogue with people. And there's certainly opportunities within that we've kept throughout the week that are like higher intensity days,
yes,
or being able to get that feeling of racing and having, certain times, but doing things for time and whatnot, but it's controlled, and
totally,
there's something behind that like obviously I'm keeping into account, that can allow it to kind of stay within a zone that we want it to.
Yeah.
And most importantly, I think what this does is it shifts the end goal from a score of some sort to, like you said, quality of movement.
Yeah.
And it's when you now have to start thinking about tempo and reps and rest and what, like you're being kind of judged on your level of control, right? Like, hey, you're doing a half kneeling dumbbell press, how well can you like squeeze your butt while you're pressing?
Yeah.
That's a cooler focus point than like, oh, how well can you kick somebody else's here? It's like
totally,
it shifts that. And so over time, I think people can walk away leaving a little more fulfilled from the training too.
Yeah. I mean, clients love being interacted with. They love learning when they're in the gym. Like, it happens here at Revival Strength. Like, the floor coach experience is so important because people get a chance to actually learn something. We go up to them, we give them coaching cues, and they love that aspect of the training. So how can you get more opportunities like that within your group fitness program? And I'll end on one more point, which is, what you do and provide for the gyms that you program for. And similarly, Shauna here at Revival Strength does this, and I've done this too. It is such a valuable, it's such a value add for the owners and the coaches, because you can spend hours and unnecessarily on trying to design the best program. Yeah. And what does that do? It takes you away from connecting with your members, from coaching them, and from doing the extra work. Like you said, like, how do we talk about these topics? How do I lay out a lesson plan for today? I think there's too many people that are trying to take the program design, role for their facility. Mm-hmm. And it's something that if you can outsource it to a company like ours, that we are professionals in doing that, and we have a ton of experience, and we can provide you with great great programs that we listen to your feedback and we can help you, customize a plan for you. I would take that opportunity, right? Like, I could learn how to do bookkeeping. Like,
Yeah.
I could learn QuickBooks. But there are people that do bookkeeping as a profession, and they're a lot more efficient than me, and they do a much better job that I can trust, and I don't have to doubt what's happening. So I'll take that, 5 hours or more, 8 hours a month that I would dedicate to bookkeeping and trying to keep on tabs, with my business, and I'll put that towards, business development, rather. You know what I mean? And I think that's a place that a lot of coaches and owners might be finding themselves in the program design category. It's like, so that's just it's a plug for our services, but I think it's such a value add. I think what you do for these gyms is incredible. And, additionally, we have a 3 time a week FBB group program that you can purchase and subscribe to monthly online, which you can see the link, from functionalbodybuilding.net. But either of those options, whether you want to take a deep dive and really, have somebody that can blend together functional bodybuilding with some intensity and with some of the traditional stuff that people in your gym are used to, that's kind of the approach that you're taking with gyms. Or you want to just take a little bit of a stab at introducing some of these concepts 1, 2, 3 days a week, I think we have something that could really enhance the culture and give your clients some longevity and overcome that burnout that happens for so many people.
Yeah, 100%. I remember just a phone call that I had with a gym owner, and he told me how much time it takes him per week to get the program out. And do you want to guess what it was?
Like 10 or 12 hours or something like that.
It was 7.
Yeah,
but
that's
still,
a ton, right?
That's a lot of time.
I mean, and this is like not just, there's a lot better things you can be doing for 7 hours.
Yeah, totally.
A
So,
week.
email us at support@revival-strength.com if you're interested in checking out anything related to the programs. And if you have questions around this episode and want us to elaborate on any of the topics we've talked about, head over to speakpipe.com/look good, move well.
Peace.
Peace.